She walked in 13 minutes late, soaked to the skin and trembling so badly she could barely hold her portfolio. Then Roman Vale, the most feared man in New Orleans, took one look at her and shut down $1 million meeting. Have you ever entered a room already certain everyone had decided you did not belong there? Claire Bennett knew that feeling. Rain clung to her dress. 18 powerful men watched her cross the black marble floor. One mistake could erase 7 years of sacrifice, sleepless nights, and a reputation built one perfect sentence at a time. But this is not only a story about a frightened interpreter and a mafia boss. It is about the moment fear becomes courage, protection becomes control, and one overlooked woman discovers that a single word can destroy an empire. Stay until the end. Like the video and comment where you are watching from. 45 minutes earlier, Claire Bennett had been standing beneath the iron shelter of the street. Charles streetcar platform, watching the worst morning of her professional life arrive one red notification at a time. Rain swept across New Orleans in silver sheets. Water ran along the curb and gathered around the tracks. Cars moved through the intersection with their headlights on each tire cutting a dark path through the flooded street. Somewhere beyond the buildings, thunder rolled over the Mississippi. Claire looked at her phone again. Service suspended due to flooding and electrical failure. The message had not changed. The meeting began at 9. Her screen showed 8:08. She pressed her lips together and checked the rideshare app. The first driver had canceled after making her wait 9 minutes. The second car appeared 3 blocks away, turned onto the wrong street, then began moving in the opposite direction. Claire called the number on the assignment email. Meridian Linguistic Services answered after the 6th ring. "This is Hannah. It's Claire Bennett. The streetcar line is down." There was a brief pause followed by the sound of a keyboard. "You're assigned to the Vale negotiation." "I'm aware. They requested 9 sharp." "I know what sharp means." Hannah lowered her voice. "This client is different." Claire watched rain bounce from the metal rail beside her. All clients become different when enough money is involved. This one is not like the others. How is he different? The silence that followed was careful. "Just get there." The line went dead. Claire slowly lowered the phone. Hannah had not said good luck. She had not repeated the address. She had not reminded Claire to submit her invoice by Friday. She had ended the call like someone closing a door before a sound could escape. Claire opened the original assignment email. It contained only a few lines. Simultaneous English and Spanish interpretation. Executive commercial negotiation. Strict confidentiality. Crescent Crown Tower. 42nd floor. 9 in the morning. The emergency rate was almost twice what Claire usually earned. No company name appeared in the subject line. The attached documents had been redacted so heavily that entire paragraphs looked like black walls. Claire had spent most of the previous night preparing. At 1 in the morning, Claire had closed her laptop and placed her notebook beside the deep green dress hanging from her bedroom door. Now she stood in the rain while a driver continued moving away from her. Claire called him. A man answered over loud music. She ended the call and canceled the ride. A fee appeared immediately. For 1 second, she wanted to scream. Instead, she closed her eyes and took one measured breath. The habit came from years of interpreting. When a room became chaotic, the interpreter could not join the chaos. She had to create a private chamber inside her own mind, quiet enough to receive one language, understand its purpose, and return it in another. Claire opened her eyes. A taxi turned the corner with its roof light on. She stepped into the street and raised one hand. The driver almost passed her. He braked hard near the curb, spraying water across the sidewalk. Claire got inside and pulled the door shut. Crescent Crown Tower, Canal Street entrance. The driver looked at her through the mirror. "Downtown is flooded. I can see that. 30 minutes, maybe more. I have 18. He gave a tired shrug and pulled into traffic. Traffic stopped 3 blocks from the tower. Claire looked through the windshield. Crescent Crown Tower rose beyond the intersection, black glass disappearing into the clouds. "I'll walk." The driver glanced back. "In this rain, I'm already late." She paid open the door and stepped into the storm. Her heels struck the wet pavement unevenly. She held the portfolio beneath her coat and kept one hand at her throat. Wind pushed rain into her face. Cold water gathered at the back of her neck. The tower was less than 3 blocks away. She might still reach the elevator before 9. A black sport utility vehicle entered the intersection too quickly. Its tires cut through a deep pool near the curb. Claire saw the water rise before she could turn away. The wave struck her left side from shoulder to knee. Cold shocked the breath from her lungs. She stopped beneath the awning of a closed restaurant, one hand pressed against the brick wall. Water ran from the hem of her coat. Her dress clung to her hip. One shoe felt full. Across the street, the vehicle continued without slowing. Claire looked down at herself. For a moment, the city seemed to go quiet. Traffic still groaned. Rain still struck metal. Thunder still moved somewhere beyond the river. But inside Claire, something stopped. Unprofessional, unprepared, not suited for executive work. The words came easily because Claire had heard versions of them before. At 22, she had sat across from a managing partner at one of the largest language firms in Houston. She had worn a navy suit purchased with nearly all the money left from graduation. The partner praised her fluency. Then he folded his hands and smiled. "We need someone with more authority in executive rooms." Claire had understood. Older, male, broader shoulders, a deeper voice. Someone powerful men would not question before he spoke. She thanked him for his time, walked 4 blocks to the train, and cried only after the doors closed. That night she opened a new notebook and wrote one sentence on the first page. "Competence is the only language prejudice cannot silence forever." For 7 years she treated every assignment like evidence. She built her reputation one accurate sentence at a time. Now one flooded street threatened to make her look careless before she spoke a single word. Claire pressed her lips together. Then she stepped out from beneath the awning. She crossed the street and kept walking. The lobby clock read 9:05 when she entered Crescent Crown Tower. The building was enormous and almost silent, a polished cavern of black stone, pale light, and security glass. Claire approached the nearest security desk. The officer looked at her wet coat. Name? Claire Bennett. Contract interpreter. 42nd floor. He searched the screen. His expression did not change, but he looked at her again. Identification. She handed him her license. He studied it, typed something, then lifted a telephone. Claire glanced at the clock. 9:06. The officer spoke too quietly for her to hear. He listened. His eyes moved toward her. "Yes," he said. "She has arrived now." The words settled between Claire's shoulder blades. The officer returned her license. "Elevator 6. No calls on the executive floor, no photographs. Do not enter any room except the conference room. Understood." He did not tell her where the conference room was. The security gate opened. Claire walked to elevator 6 and pressed the button. The doors opened immediately. Every surface inside was mirrored. For the first time since leaving the taxi, Claire saw the full damage. She opened her bag and found a small makeup case. The elevator began to rise. Claire reapplied lipstick with one hand. The first attempt was uneven. She wiped it away. The second looked worse. She stared at her reflection. The floor numbers climbed. 26, 33, 38. Claire closed the makeup case. She gripped the edge of her portfolio. "Walk in," she whispered. Her reflection watched her. "Do the work." The elevator passed 40. Brake later. The doors opened. The hallway beyond was quiet enough to hear the low hum of the building. 2 men waited beside dark wooden doors. Both wore black suits. Neither looked like hotel security. One checked his watch. "You're late. I noticed." 13 minutes, Claire answered before caution could stop her. "I can count in both languages." The man's expression hardened. For one dangerous second, Claire considered apologizing for the tone. She did not. "Claire Bennett," she continued. "Certified legal interpreter, English and Spanish. I'm assigned to the veil negotiation." The second man touched his earpiece. He listened. Then he opened the door. 18 men turned toward her. The room seemed to narrow around their attention. Claire felt every wet strand of hair against her face. She felt the cold fabric clinging to her side. She felt the delay in every man's expression as his eyes moved from her clothing to the clock. At the far end of the room, a tall man stood beside the windows. He did not check the time. He did not look at the guards. He looked only at her. Claire knew immediately that the room belonged to him, not because he occupied the largest chair. He was not sitting. Not because anyone announced his name. No one needed to. The other men seemed arranged around his stillness. Their shoulders shifted when he moved. Their voices disappeared while he watched. His suit was black, fitted without appearing decorative. His white shirt sleeves were rolled to his forearms, revealing dark ink beneath the fabric. One hand rested in his pocket. The other hung loosely at his side. He looked dangerous in the way old buildings looked dangerous during hurricanes. Nothing visible was moving. That did not mean the structure could not crush you. Claire crossed the room. One step, then another. She did not rush. Rushing would look like panic. She did not slow. Slowing would make everyone wait longer. The interpreter's station stood beside the table rather than at it. Claire placed down her portfolio. She removed her notebook. Her fingers shook once when she reached for her pen. She pressed them against the page until they stopped. A silver-haired man near the center leaned back. "Now that our interpreter has finally decided to join us." The man beside the windows raised one hand. The sentence died. His eyes remained on Claire. "End the session." No one moved. A dark-haired attorney looked up from his papers. "Roman, the Cartagena delegation flew in last night. Clear the room." Chairs moved back, folders closed. The silver-haired man remained seated for 1 second too long. "Is there a problem?" Roman Vale finally looked at him. "If you are still sitting there in 10 seconds, there will be." The man rose. Within a minute, the room was empty except for Claire Roman, his attorney, and one security officer. Roman looked toward the door. Outside. The attorney hesitated. Roman said nothing else. The attorney left. The guard followed. The doors closed. Claire remained beside the interpreter's station. Roman approached, then stopped several feet away. He left enough distance for her to move. "You came into my meeting 13 minutes late." The streetcar system stopped. "You are soaking wet. A truck discovered the deepest pool of water in Louisiana. You were shaking when you entered." Claire raised her chin. "I still entered." Something shifted near his mouth. Not a smile. Not yet. "Who hired you, Meridian Linguistic Services, when yesterday afternoon?" His attention sharpened. "Yesterday. Yes." Rain struck the windows behind him. Roman took out his phone and sent a message. The reply arrived almost immediately. He read it. His expression did not change. "The original interpreter withdrew yesterday morning. I wasn't told. You were assigned 8 hours later. I was told it was overflow work. It wasn't." Claire looked at the closed doors. The cold fabric against her skin no longer seemed important. "Am I in danger?" Roman's answer came too calmly. "That depends on why someone wanted an unknown woman sitting close enough to hear everything said at my table." "Then replace me." Roman studied her face. "You want to leave. I want you to decide whether I'm qualified after hearing my work, not after looking at my coat. Most people would explain why none of this was their fault. It isn't my fault. No. But it became my problem when you walked through that door. Claire opened her notebook. Columns of legal and shipping terms filled the pages in careful handwriting. English on one side, Spanish on the other, distinctions underlined twice. Roman's eyes moved across the notes. You prepared all of this last night. I don't enjoy professional surprises. He looked at her wet dress. Today appears committed to irony. A quiet sound left him. It was not laughter, but it came close. He looked at his watch. You can leave. You will still be paid. Claire thought of the 6 hours of preparation. She thought of the managing partner in Houston. She thought of the sentence written on the first page of her notebook. Then she looked at Roman again. I came here to work. That is not the safest decision. It is still mine. For several seconds, neither of them moved. Roman's gaze dropped once more to the notes. Then he turned toward the head of the table. You have 40 seconds. For what? To become ready. Claire removed her wet coat and folded it over the chair. She adjusted the headset. She opened the contract to the first marked section and uncapped her pen. Roman stopped beside his chair. If anyone asks why the session was cleared, you say nothing. I wasn't planning to issue a statement. His eyes returned to her. Ms. Bennett. Yes. Do not mistake the absence of visible danger for safety. Claire held his gaze. Do not mistake fear for incompetence. The room became still again. Then Roman touched the control beside his chair. The doors opened. The men returned in quiet groups. Grant Mercer entered last. His eyes moved from Roman to Claire, measuring the distance between them as if something important might be hidden there. He resumed his seat. Adrian Knox placed a fresh copy of the contract in front of Roman. The doors closed. Roman sat for the first time that morning. He rested one hand beside the document and looked across the table. Begin again. Claire lifted the headset and placed her fingers against the first page. The opening sentence reached her in English, polished and controlled, carrying the weight of something designed to sound simpler than it was. Claire listened. She separated the legal structure from the speaker's performance. Then she translated. Her voice came out steady. The room moved forward, and for the first time that morning no one was looking at the rain on her dress. That lasted exactly 7 minutes. Then Grant Mercer began speaking, and the room remembered why every person at the table had come. Our position remains unchanged, he said. Vail Atlantic will receive guaranteed access to the Southern Freight Network, provided the exclusivity period remains limited to the initial term. His voice was smooth, almost warm. He sounded like a man explaining something reasonable to people who had simply failed to understand him. Claire listened through the headset. She separated the grammar from the intention. Then she carried the sentence into Spanish. Across the table, one of the Colombian representatives responded immediately. The proposed limitation makes the guarantee commercially meaningless. Claire returned the answer to English without hesitation. Grant's attorney objected. Adrian corrected a date. Another representative interrupted to clarify the difference between port access and terminal control. The negotiation moved forward. For the first several minutes, Claire thought only about survival. Listen, understand, hold the structure, translate the meaning, release the sentence. The process had always felt physical to her. Words entered one side of her mind and passed through a narrow internal chamber where sound separated from meaning. Tone became intention. Intention became language. The sentence emerged before the next one arrived. There was no room inside that chamber for embarrassment, no room for the wet fabric against her skin, no room for the clock on the wall, no room for Roman Vail. Claire matched each speaker carefully. She gave the Colombian executives formal corporate Spanish. She gave Adrian precise legal English. She preserved the restrained politeness Grant used whenever he was preparing to demand something unreasonable. Within 15 minutes, no one looked at her clothing. Within 20, they stopped remembering she had been late. Within 30, they began waiting for her. That was how Claire knew she had taken control of her part of the room. No one praised her. No one needed to. The silence between a sentence and its translation became unquestioned space. Roman spoke rarely. When he did, the room changed around him. At first, Claire assumed his silence was an ordinary negotiation strategy. Powerful men often allowed attorneys and advisors to fill the air before entering with a final position. Roman's silence was different. He was not waiting for an opportunity to speak. He was deciding whether the conversation deserved to continue. Grant proposed a modification to the schedule governing access to 3 river terminals. Adrian objected. One of the consortium attorneys offered a clarification. Another man repeated the proposal using different language. The discussion circled itself for almost 4 minutes. Roman listened without appearing impatient. Then he placed 2 fingers against the open contract. The northern route remains unchanged. That was all. Claire translated the sentence. The Spanish words felt heavier than their length. A Colombian executive began to respond. Roman looked at him. The man stopped. Claire understood. Roman did not offer counter-proposals when he believed a matter had already been settled. He did not use extra words to make other men feel involved in decisions he considered finished. She adjusted immediately. When he paused, she preserved the pause. When he emphasized a single term, she gave its Spanish equivalent the same weight. When he allowed silence to follow a refusal, she did not rush to soften it. At 9:52, Grant suggested shifting inspection liability to Vale Atlantic whenever customs officials delayed a shipment. Roman allowed him to explain the proposal for nearly 3 minutes. Then he said, "No." Claire translated the single word. Grant folded his hands. Perhaps a proportional allocation would better reflect the realities of shared control? "No," Claire translated again. Grant's attorney leaned forward. What if liability followed operational authority rather than contractual ownership? Roman did not look at him. "No." The third translation left Claire's mouth with the same calm weight as the first. One of the representatives glanced between her and Roman. Claire felt Roman's attention before she looked up. He was watching her. Not with suspicion, with recognition. She had not softened him. She had not improved his manners or made his refusal easier to accept. She had carried his meaning intact. Their eyes met for less than a second. Then Grant began speaking again, and the room closed over the moment. The agreement concerned access to river terminals, warehouses, rail connections, and inland transportation routes throughout Louisiana, Texas, and parts of the southern coast. On the surface, the exchange appeared straightforward. Vale Atlantic would provide storage trucking capacity and inland distribution. The consortium would guarantee cargo volume and priority access through several international ports. Beneath that structure, every clause concealed a fight. Who absorbed losses during customs delays? Who controlled emergency routing? Who could suspend access? How quickly notice had to be provided? Which language version governed when the English and Spanish contracts did not agree? The final question mattered more than anyone seemed willing to admit. The English draft favored Vale Atlantic in several places. The Spanish draft favored the consortium in others. Most differences were small enough to be dismissed as style. One was not. Grant turned to a provision concerning regional exclusivity. "We are prepared to accept a narrower exclusivity period," he said, provided that access remains commercially reasonable throughout the term. Claire listened. Her eyes moved to the Spanish draft. The phrase on the page was not equivalent. The Spanish language allowed access to remain available only when commercially viable under prevailing market conditions. The difference looked harmless. It was not. The English version created a standard of conduct. Vale Atlantic had to receive reasonable access regardless of whether market conditions became inconvenient. The Spanish version created a condition. The consortium could reduce access whenever it decided the arrangement was no longer economically attractive. Claire stopped before translating. The silence lasted less than 2 seconds. In a room like that, 2 seconds was an announcement. Grant looked at her. "Is there a problem?" Ms. Bennett Claire kept one finger beneath the disputed line. For accuracy, the English statement and the Spanish draft do not create the same obligation. Grant's attorney leaned forward. "In what respect? The English version requires commercially reasonable access. The Spanish version allows access to depend on current market conditions." Grant's expression remained pleasant. "That seems like a narrow distinction. One describes how the parties must behave. The other allows the obligation to change." The attorney beside Grant looked at her over the top of his glasses. "Are you offering legal interpretation?" Claire kept her voice level. "No. I am identifying a linguistic difference before translating the sentence as though no difference exists." A chair shifted near the windows. Adrian reached for the Spanish contract. He read the line, then compared it with the English page. His eyes lifted toward Roman. "She is correct." One of the Colombian representatives spoke rapidly in Spanish. He insisted that outside counsel had prepared the wording and that no strategic difference was intended. Claire translated every word. She did not remove the defensiveness from his tone. She did not make the explanation sound more convincing than it was. Roman did not look at the representative. He looked at Grant. "Correct the draft." Grant folded his hands. "The distinction may be less material than Ms. Bennett suggests." Roman's gaze remained still. "Adrian, it is material." Roman turned one page, then corrected. Grant held the silence for a moment. A man protecting his pride might have continued arguing. Grant protected leverage instead. He nodded to his attorney. The clause was marked for revision. The negotiation resumed. Claire lowered her eyes to her notes, but she could feel Grant watching her. She had changed in his mind. She was no longer a contractor who had arrived late. She was an obstacle. At 10:38, Roman called a recess. The room loosened immediately. Attorneys reached for their phones. Assistants opened laptops. A security officer entered with coffee water and fresh documents. The Colombian representatives moved toward the windows and began speaking quietly among themselves. Claire removed her headset. A dull ache had formed behind her ears. She pressed 2 fingers to her temple and reviewed the notes she had made during the session. Someone placed a glass of water near her hand. She looked up. Roman stood beside the station. "I could have reached it," she said. The pitcher was on the other side of the table. "I have arms." So I noticed. The answer was quiet enough that no one else heard it. Claire looked at him. His expression remained controlled, but something had changed since their private conversation. The threat inside his stillness had not disappeared. It had become less impersonal. "You found the clause quickly," he said. "It was different. Everyone at this table read both versions. Most people read what they expect to see. And you?" Claire closed her pen. "I look for what someone hopes I will miss." His gaze held hers for a second longer than necessary. "That sounds exhausting. It pays better than trust." A trace of amusement moved through his eyes. Before Roman could answer, Adrian approached with a folder beneath one arm. "I need a word." Roman did not move immediately. His eyes dropped to Claire's untouched water. "Drink." She raised one eyebrow. That sounded like an order. It was medical advice from a logistics executive. "Do you often provide medical advice?" "Only when the interpreter looks ready to collapse before the liability section." Claire glanced at the glass. "Your concern is touching. My concern is practical." "Of course." Roman stepped away with Adrian. Claire lifted the glass. The water was cold. Across the room, Grant watched her drink it. He approached after Roman and Adrian moved toward the far windows. Grant carried no coffee and no documents. He stopped at the edge of Claire's station with the careful distance of a man who understood how to appear harmless. "You are very good," he said. "Thank you. I have worked with interpreters who would not have caught that distinction." Then they were not reading both versions. Some believe their responsibility begins and ends with spoken language. Mine begins and ends with accuracy. Grant looked down at her notebook. Her handwriting was small and structured. Terms were grouped by subject. Question marks marked ambiguous language. Arrows connected repeated concepts across different pages. "How long have you worked with Mr. Vale? I do not." Grant's eyes lifted. "No, I was contracted yesterday by Meridian." "Yesterday?" "Yes." He looked toward Roman. "Interesting." Claire closed the notebook. Why, Grant's smile grew warmer without becoming kind. "You understand him unusually well for someone you met this morning." "I understand language." "That is not what I meant. It is what I do." Grant studied her face. "Men like Roman Vale do not make room at their tables without a reason. He hired an interpreter. Meridian hired an interpreter. Then perhaps you should direct your curiosity to Meridian." His smile thinned by a degree. "You read rooms well." "I have to." "Then you understand that being noticed in certain rooms can be useful. It can also be expensive." His eyes sharpened. Claire held his gaze. Grant's pleasant expression returned. "You are not yet a permanent member of his team." "I have no intention of becoming one." People often discover intentions they did not know they had. "Is there a question behind this conversation?" Professional curiosity. Professional curiosity usually has a purpose. For the first time, the warmth left his face entirely. Only for a second. Then he stepped back. "I look forward to the afternoon session, Ms. Bennett." "So do I." Grant walked away. Claire released the breath she had been holding. Roman appeared beside her a moment later. She had not seen him cross the room. "What did he want? To know how long I have belonged to you?" Roman's expression became unreadable. "And what did you tell him that I do not?" He nodded once. "Good." The approval irritated her. "You agree?" "Yes." Why? Roman looked toward Grant, who was speaking with one of his attorneys. "Because you do not belong to anyone." The answer stopped her. Roman's attention returned to her, especially not a man who asks questions before deciding what he wants from the answers. "You think he was testing me?" "He tests everything." "What did he learn?" "That you are observant." "He already knew that." "He learned you are willing to say what you observe." The recess ended before Claire could answer. Everyone returned to the table. She replaced the headset over her ears. The next section concerned cargo losses during port inspections. It required almost an hour of continuous interpretation. By the end of it, Claire's throat felt dry. Her mind did not. She had found the rhythm of the room. Adrian spoke in complete legal structures. Grant's attorney buried conditions near the ends of sentences. The Colombian representatives interrupted most often when they felt cornered. Grant became more polite before making a demand. Roman became quieter when he was angry. At 11:49, Grant proposed shifting all liability for inspection delays to Vale Atlantic. Roman let him speak for 3 minutes. Then he said, "No." Claire translated the word. Grant smiled. "Perhaps you would consider a proportional allocation." "No." "Based on operational control num." The third translation left Claire with the same finality as the first. It created a strange form of intimacy. She knew the exact shape of Roman's refusal. He trusted her not to soften it. At noon, Roman closed the contract. "We continue at 2. The opposing team gathered their documents. The room emptied in stages. Claire removed her headset and rubbed the back of her neck. Her coat still hung over the chair, damp and useless. She opened her bag and found the almond bar she had packed that morning. "Lunch is being brought up." Roman's voice came from the head of the table. Claire looked over. He had remained behind. Adrian had left with the others. Silas stood near the door, speaking quietly into his earpiece. Claire held up the bar. "I came prepared. For a hostage situation, for a long meeting. That is not lunch. It contains almonds." Roman walked toward her. "The food will be here in 5 minutes." Claire waited. He seemed to realize something. "You can stay." She studied him. Was that a request? It was intended to be. "It needs work." Roman stopped beside the chair across from her. "Would you stay?" That was better. "Is that a yes?" Claire placed the almond bar back inside her bag. "Yes." Silas glanced toward Roman. Roman gave him a small nod. The security officer left and closed the doors. Lunch arrived on a silver cart pushed by a hotel employee who looked at no one for longer than a second. There was soup, roasted chicken bread, salad, and coffee. Nothing extravagant, nothing careless. Roman divided the meal between two places without ceremony. They sat near the windows, not opposite each other at the far ends of the table, not close enough to suggest familiarity. Rain moved across the Mississippi in dark bands. For a while they ate without speaking. Roman did not ask empty questions. He did not mention the weather or her commute. He did not ask whether she enjoyed interpreting. His silence did not feel awkward. It felt chosen. Claire broke it first. "Does everyone leave when you tell them to?" "Yes." You say that as if it has always been true. It has not. What changed? Roman tore a piece of bread. "I became someone they believed. Believed about what? That refusing me has consequences." Claire watched him. "You make that sound almost reasonable. It is reasonable to the people who understand the arrangement, and the people who do not. They learn." His voice remained calm. That made the sentence more disturbing. Claire should have wanted distance. Instead, she found herself studying him. The rolled sleeves, the dark ink on his forearms, the restraint in every movement. He had the body of a man capable of violence and the discipline of someone who rarely needed to demonstrate it. "You recognized my name this morning," Roman said. "Yes." And stayed. I had already survived a flooded street and a taxi driver with a personal commitment to delay. Roman looked at her. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then he smiled. It changed his face more than Claire expected. The severity remained, but it no longer seemed carved into him. "What did you hear about me?" he asked. "That people lower their voices when they say your name. Anything else? That Vale Atlantic is legitimate. It is. On paper." The smile disappeared, though not from offense. And away from paper. Claire lifted her glass. "I was hired to translate words, not rumors. You hear more than words. That does not mean I repeat everything I hear. Why not? Discretion is part of competence. Some people call it loyalty. I reserve loyalty for people. Discretion belongs to the work." Roman considered that. "You make careful distinctions. I translate for a living. That is your answer for everything. It is a useful profession." He looked at her for a long moment. "Why did you stay at the station when I cleared the room? You told everyone at the table to leave. You were in the room. I was beside the table." "That is a very careful distinction. It is the accurate one. And if I had meant everyone in the room, you would have said everyone in the room." Roman's eyes narrowed slightly. Most people would not test that difference. "I was not testing you. What were you doing? My job." He looked toward the interpreter's station. You believed your job required you to remain alone with a man whose name you had heard in lowered voices. My job required me not to abandon my station until I was dismissed. That sounds like pride. It is. The honesty seemed to please him. Pride creates problems. So does the lack of it. Rain tapped the windows. Far below, cars moved along the river roads in thin streams of light. Roman lifted his coffee. What else does the job require? Accuracy, neutrality, memory, restraint. Restraint. An interpreter hears things that are not meant for her personally. Anger, threats, confessions, insults. And you do nothing, I translate them. That is doing something, not for myself. Roman's gaze sharpened. Does that become difficult? Yes. When people assume neutrality means I have no judgment. And do I what? Have a judgment of me? The question entered the space between them without warning. Claire did not answer immediately. She looked at his hands. One rested around the coffee cup. The other lay flat against the table. No rings. A faint scar crossed one knuckle. You are accustomed to controlling outcomes, she said. That is an observation. You do not waste words. Also an observation. You frighten people on purpose. His eyes stayed on hers. Sometimes. You do not enjoy being misunderstood, but you allow it when fear is useful. A quieter stillness entered his face. And what does that make me? I have known you for 3 hours. You understood Grant in less than one. Grant wants something from me. So do I. The directness tightened something beneath Claire's ribs. What Roman did not look away. I have not decided. The answer should have sounded calculated. Instead, it sounded honest. Claire turned toward the window first. The river had become nearly black beneath the storm. Roman broke the silence. What is your judgment of yourself? That is not a normal lunch question. I do not have many normal lunches. I find that easy to believe. He waited. Claire folded her napkin once. I think I am good at what I do. You think I know. Then why did you look as though you expected to be thrown out this morning? The question found the place she had kept hidden since entering the tower. She could have dismissed it. She could have said arriving late was unprofessional and left the answer there. Instead, she looked down at the fading watermark on her dress. Because competence does not protect you before people see it. Roman said nothing. Claire continued. You can spend years building a reputation and lose a room in the first 10 seconds. The wrong clothes, the wrong age, the wrong accent, the wrong entrance. You believed the room had already decided. Yes. And you entered anyway. What else was I supposed to do? Most people leave before rejection becomes official. The words carried an old familiarity. Claire looked at him. Is that what you would have done? No. Then why ask? Because I wanted to hear why you did not. His attention became complete. Claire had spent years in rooms where powerful men looked through her around her or only at the service she provided. Roman looked at her as though the answer mattered beyond the conversation. I did not leave, she said, because I refused to help that room underestimate me. Something changed in his expression. Recognition, perhaps? Not of her words, of the instinct beneath them. The doors opened. Adrian entered with a folder beneath one arm. He stopped when he saw the 2 plates. His gaze moved from Claire to Roman. The revised draft is ready. Roman stood. Lunch ended without another word. The afternoon session began at 2. The rain softened against the windows, leaving long silver trails across the glass. Claire returned to the interpreter's station with a full notebook and a sharper awareness of Roman than she wanted. The attorneys began with the corrected exclusivity clause. Grant acknowledged the change without looking at Claire. That concerned her more than another smile would have. For the next hour, the conversation remained technical. No obvious traps, no public challenges. Grant allowed his attorneys to speak while he observed. At 3:14, Roman rejected a proposal concerning emergency routing. Claire translated. Grant leaned back. His gaze moved from Roman to Claire. Then he addressed Roman in Spanish. The choice was deliberate. He had spoken English throughout the entire day. Now his tone became almost conversational. It is remarkable how closely your interpreter follows your reasoning. One might think she understands more than the language. Claire heard the insult beneath the compliment. The room waited. She translated the sentence into English exactly as spoken. Grant looked directly at her. You translate everything, Ms. Bennett. That is the arrangement. Even statements not intended for you. If I can hear them while performing my duties, they are part of the room. A silence formed. Not Roman's silence. This one felt like breath held before impact. Roman closed the document in front of him. Grant. His voice carried no anger. That made Grant straighten. Finish today's session professionally or tomorrow's meeting proceeds without you. Grant's smile returned. Its warmth did not. Of course. The session continued. No one mentioned the exchange again. At 4:36, Roman ended the meeting. The opposing team gathered their materials and left with controlled efficiency. Grant was the last to reach the door. He paused beside Claire's station. An impressive first day. Claire capped her pen. I prefer accurate. I am sure you do. He left. The doors closed. Silas crossed the room and approached Roman near the windows. He spoke quietly, but Claire caught her own name. Roman's face became completely still when he asked, 22 minutes after she corrected the clause, who requested it? Someone from Mercer's office. Claire remained beside the station. She did not pretend she had heard nothing. Roman looked across the room at her. Silas followed his gaze. What did they request? Claire asked. Silas waited for Roman. Roman answered. Your employment history, your professional references, your major clients. Cold moved through Claire's body. Grant had stopped testing the room. He had started building something. Silas left to continue the investigation. Claire closed her portfolio. Roman remained near the windows, watching the door Grant had used. Is that normal? She asked. For Grant. For anyone in a negotiation to investigate the interpreter. No. What can he do with that information? Roman turned toward her. That depends on what he finds. He will find that I work. That may be enough. To do what? To decide which part of your life will respond fastest to pressure. Claire folded her arms. What does he think I know? He may not care what you know. Then why investigate me? Roman's eyes held hers. Because he noticed you. The words settled between them. He saw me stop the meeting. Roman continued. He saw me speak to you privately. He saw you correct his language. I corrected the contract. He saw that I allowed it. You allowed accuracy. In his mind, I gave you authority in the room. I earned authority in the room. I know. His voice softened by a degree. Grant does not. Claire understood. He thinks I am important to you. Roman did not offer a denial. He is trying to determine whether you are. Her phone vibrated inside her portfolio. Claire removed it. An email notification from Meridian Linguistic Services filled the screen. The subject line read, Concern regarding professional neutrality. Claire opened the message. Please contact the agency before tomorrow's session. A question has been raised concerning whether your relationship with a principal in the negotiation may compromise your neutrality. She read the sentence twice. Then she looked at Roman. The rain had almost stopped, but the city beyond the windows remained dark with it. Grant had not threatened her body. He had chosen something far more fragile. Her name. Claire read the message a third time. The words did not become clearer. They became more dangerous. A question has been raised concerning whether your relationship with a principal in the negotiation may compromise your neutrality. No accusation, no evidence, no name, only a question placed carefully enough to enter her professional record without giving her anything solid to defend against. Roman watched her from across the conference room. What did they send? Claire held out the phone. Roman read the message without touching it. His expression did not change, but the stillness inside him became complete. Grant sent this. They did not identify the source. They did not need to. Claire locked the screen and returned the phone to her portfolio. I need to leave. There is a car downstairs. I can arrange my own ride. I know. Then why are you telling me what to do? Roman approached, but stopped before entering her space. I am not telling you what to do. There is a car at the Canal Street entrance. You may use it or ignore it. That sounds carefully rehearsed. It is carefully intended. Claire studied him. Power shaped every part of Roman. It lived in the way he stood, the way he spoke, the certainty that the world would respond when he made a decision. Yet he was forcing himself to leave the decision with her. No one will enter your building, he said. No one will ask where you go afterward. The driver does not know your address. At least you are learning how requests work. I have had a demanding teacher. She almost smiled. The feeling vanished when she remembered the message. At the door, Claire stopped. If Grant is trying to use me against you, what happens when he realizes it will not work? Roman's gaze hardened. He may try to use me against you. The elevator ride down felt longer than the ascent. Claire stood alone inside the mirrored car, holding her portfolio against her ribs. Her clothes were nearly dry. Her posture was straight. Only her eyes revealed that something had shifted. She had entered the building afraid of being judged. She was leaving afraid of being valued by the wrong people. A black car waited beneath the tower awning. The driver opened the rear door. Do you know where I live? Claire asked. No, ma'am. Mr. Vale did not give you an address. He said you would. That answer surprised her. Claire gave him the intersection nearest her apartment rather than the building number. New Orleans passed beyond the tinted windows in wet reflections of amber red and white. Claire told herself the car meant nothing. It was transportation, a practical response to a professional risk. She repeated the explanation until she reached home. Her apartment occupied the fourth floor of a converted warehouse near Julia Street. It was small and quiet, with a gray sofa, crowded bookshelves, and a narrow dining table that served as her desk. Claire locked the door behind her. The silence pressed against her ears after hours of voices. On the table lay the notebook she had carried to her first federal arbitration. The leather cover was worn smooth at the corners. Inside were years of dates terms and small corrections no one else remembered. Claire ran one finger over the cover. Her reputation had never arrived in a single dramatic moment. It had been assembled through ordinary decisions made when no one was watching, a flight accepted with 4 hours of notice, a medical negotiation prepared after 2 nights without sleep, a lawyer corrected privately instead of embarrassed publicly, a confidential conversation forgotten the moment she left the room. She remembered a manufacturing executive who once called Meridian after a difficult arbitration. He had not praised her voice or her vocabulary. He had said only that when the room became hostile, Claire had remained exact. That sentence had brought 3 more assignments. 3 assignments had brought 10. 10 had become a career. Reputation did not feel like fame. It felt like a bridge built plank by plank across deep water. Every client, every reference, every accurate sentence supported the next step. Grant did not need to destroy the bridge. He needed only to convince people that one plank might be weak. Claire looked toward the dark window. The black car was gone. No one stood across the street. Roman had sent no message asking whether she arrived safely. He had kept the promise contained inside his offer. Transportation without surveillance. Help without an immediate claim. That restraint should have made him easier to understand. Instead, it made him harder to dismiss. She changed, took a hot shower, and made tea she forgot to drink. Then she opened her notebook and replayed the negotiation line by line. Every translation was accurate. The corrected clause had been necessary. Grant's interest in her was not a response to failure. It was a response to competence. That should have comforted her. It did not. At 10:43, Claire reviewed her public profile on Meridian's website. Client names were protected, but enough details remained for a determined person to identify several industries and institutions. At 11:06, she searched Grant Mercer. The results were polished. Professional awards, conference photographs, articles about conflict resolution. Nothing about threats. Nothing about careers damaged through a private call. Men like Grant did not create harm that appeared in search results. They created uncertainty, a concern raised without accusation, a question placed in the correct office, a client who suddenly chose someone else. At 2:11 in the morning, Claire's phone lit the room. A new email had arrived from Hannah Pike. Please call before tomorrow's session. The agency may need to review your eligibility for future executive assignments. Claire sat on the edge of the bed. 7 years of work had been reduced to the word concern. No allegation, no evidence, nothing specific enough to answer. The next morning, New Orleans looked scrubbed clean and merciless. The rain had stopped before dawn. Streets shone beneath a pale sky. Wind moved between the towers. Claire arrived downtown at 8:22. She wore a burgundy suit, a cream blouse, and low black heels. Her portfolio contained printed copies of every message connected to the assignment. From a coffee shop across from Crescent Crown Tower, she called Hannah. This time, the coordinator answered. Claire, I was going to explain. Explain now. Hannah exhaled. Someone representing one of the parties contacted compliance last night. Which party? They did not identify the individual. They identified me. Yes. What did they say? That your relationship with a principal may compromise your neutrality. Claire looked through the window at the black tower. I met Roman Vale yesterday morning. I believe you. Then close the complaint. It is not that simple. Why? Because belief and liability are different. The phrase struck Claire with the polished emptiness of corporate language. What evidence did they provide? None. What relationship did they claim exists? They did not make a direct claim. Then there is no complaint. There is a concern. Claire closed her eyes. A complaint required facts. A concern required only fear. What happens to my assignments? You will finish the Vale negotiation. After that, there may be a review before we assign you to future executive work. When was the concern submitted? Yesterday at 5:14. Less than an hour after the meeting ended. Send me the record. I cannot disclose the source. I asked for the record of the allegation. There is no formal allegation. Then why is my work under review? Hannah said nothing. Claire's voice became quieter. Preserve everything. Emails, call records, internal notes, scheduling logs. I will speak to compliance. Do that. Claire ended the call and threw away the untouched coffee. At 8:47, she entered Crescent Crown Tower. The security officer checked her identification, then looked at the clock. Early today. Claire met his eyes. I can count in both languages. He almost smiled. When the elevator opened on the 42nd floor, Silas Ward was waiting. You received something. How do you know Mercer's office contacted Meridian? You are monitoring my employer. We are monitoring Grant. That does not answer the question. No, we are not monitoring Meridian. Good. The conference room was empty except for Roman and Adrian. Roman turned when Claire entered. You are early. 13 minutes. The reference passed between them. Roman dismissed Adrian with a look, then approached Claire. What happened? She placed the printed email on the table. He read it. Your assignments are affected. Meridian will let me finish this negotiation. After that, my executive work may be reviewed. Based on what evidence? None. Roman placed the paper down carefully. This will be corrected. By whom? Me. No. His eyes lifted. No. You will not call Meridian. You will not frighten Grant. You will not make decisions about my profession without me. While you decide what is acceptable, he continues. Then give me information. Do not take control. Roman studied her. The request was unfamiliar to him. Not permission to protect her. A boundary around how he could help. What information? Who contacted the agency? What they said? Whether there is a written record? Whether Grant requested anything else? Silas is working on it. Then let him work. Roman looked at the email. You are angry. Yes. Good. That is a strange response. Fear makes people retreat. Anger makes them precise. I can be both. I know. His voice softened. That is what concerned me yesterday. The first members of Grant's team entered before Claire could answer. The morning session began at 9. Grant arrived 6 minutes late with an apology for the room and a smile for Claire. She returned neither. For the next hour, the negotiation remained technical. Claire translated every sentence with exact control. Roman tracked her through the difficult exchanges not with doubt but with attention. At 10:42, he pushed a glass of water toward her without interrupting Adrian. Claire took it. Grant saw. At 11, Roman called a recess. Grant approached Claire while she arranged her notes. Ms. Bennett? Mr. Mercer? I owe you an apology for yesterday. No, you do not. A flicker crossed his face. I was testing the dynamics of the room. You were testing whether Roman would react if you embarrassed me. Grant smiled. And did he? You were there. He looked down at her papers. I have been doing some research. I know. That stopped him for half a second. Your office requested my employment history after I corrected the exclusivity clause. I research people who enter sensitive negotiations. Did you research the court reporter Num, the assistants Num, the staff who delivered lunch? His smile thinned. You are not hotel staff. No. I am the person who found the language your team hoped no one would question. Grant's eyes became colder. You have an excellent reputation. Arbitration, shipping contracts, regulatory hearings, significant clients. I worked for it. That is why it would be unfortunate if those clients began questioning whether your translations remain neutral around certain men. The threat entered quietly. No raised voice, no explicit demand. Only a possibility placed between them. What do you want? I want you to understand that attention is not protection. What do you want from me? Nothing yet. The answer was worse than a request. You filed the concern with Meridian. I have no knowledge of your agency's decisions. You knew they contacted me. Grant's expression did not change. You look tired. You made a mistake. Did I? You assumed threatening my reputation would make me easier to control. I assumed it would make you realistic. What does realism look like to you? Knowing when your presence has become more expensive than your absence. Claire felt Roman's attention from across the room. Grant followed her awareness. There it was, the thing he wanted to confirm. Roman was watching. Grant stepped back. Be careful, Ms. Bennett. Men like Roman Vale do not notice people without changing their lives. Claire's voice remained calm. Men like you do not offer warnings without trying to create the danger. For the first time, Grant stopped smiling. The afternoon session ended early. When the opposing team left, Roman remained at the table. Adrian and Silas waited near the entrance. Leave us, Roman said. Adrian looked at him. Roman. Outside. The doors closed behind them. Roman approached Claire's station. He threatened you. Yes. Tell me exactly what he said. Claire repeated the conversation almost word for word. The apology, the investigation, the reference to her clients, the warning that Roman's attention was not protection, the suggestion that her presence had become more expensive than her absence. Roman listened without interruption. When she finished, his anger was visible only in the absence of movement. He cannot continue. He already has. The concern can be withdrawn. It can be replaced by another concern. I can prevent that. How in ways you do not need to understand. The room seemed to contract. That is exactly the problem. It is the safest answer. For whom? For you. No. Roman's jaw tightened. You think knowledge protects you. I think ignorance makes me useful to whoever controls the information. I am not trying to use you. Then do not ask me to look away. Grant is threatening everything you built. I know. I can remove his ability to continue. By doing what Roman said nothing. Claire stepped away from the station. This is the part no one says aloud about men like you. His expression hardened. Men like me. The protection and the danger are not separate. You offer safety with one hand, but I am not allowed to ask what the other hand is doing. I am trying to keep you outside of this. I was outside of it yesterday morning. Roman looked toward the windows. I know. No, you do not. Her voice shook now, but she did not stop. I walked into this building to translate a contract. By midnight, my career was under review. Grant did that because he believes I matter to you. If you respond in some hidden way, then he is right. My life becomes a place where powerful men fight without asking me. What would you have me do? The question carried frustration because she had removed the solution he understood best. Claire met his eyes. I do not want anything done in my name that I could not face directly if I knew the truth. You are asking me to let him continue. No, I am asking you to find another way. You assume there is always another way. I assume a man with your resources can do better than making someone disappear. His eyes narrowed. I did not say anything about making him disappear. You did not have to. Roman looked at her as though she had placed something heavy in his hands. Then he walked to the table and opened a folder. Grant's client concealed liability exposure in the distribution agreement. How serious? Serious enough that they cannot afford a formal review. You knew my legal team confirmed it yesterday. What were you planning to do with it? Use it tomorrow if the negotiation stalled. Roman placed a memorandum between them. If I use it now, Grant will need the agreement to close without outside scrutiny. He will not risk an investigation into the drafts, his client's disclosures, or the origin of the concern against you. Claire read the first page. This is legal. Yes. Documented. Yes. No one is threatened. Only with consequences they created themselves. You were going to use this anyway. Tomorrow. And now. Because of me. Roman did not soften the answer. Yes. Something moved through Claire's chest. He had listened. He had not become harmless. He had taken the boundary she gave him and found a way to remain inside it. Roman pushed the folder closer. You can read everything. Claire reviewed the memorandum. The language was dense but clear. Undisclosed exposure, conflicting representations, potential regulatory review, contractual risk, nothing hidden, nothing she would have to pretend not to understand. This could stop him. It will. And if it does not, Roman looked at her. Then we have another conversation. That sounds like a threat. It is a promise to ask before I act. The doors opened. Adrian entered. He saw the memorandum. You are using it now. Yes. That changes tomorrow's strategy. Then change it. Claire placed one hand on the folder. I am not leaving the negotiation. Adrian looked at her. Replacing you may be the cleanest option. It rewards the allegation. This is not about fairness. It became about fairness when he used my name. If you stay, he may challenge you publicly. Then I answer publicly. You are an interpreter, not a party. I became part of the conflict when he made my profession part of his strategy. Adrian looked at Roman. Do not let anger make this decision. Roman's gaze remained on Claire. What do you propose I remain at the station? I perform my work. If Grant raises the allegation, I respond with facts. What facts? Adrian asked. The assignment record, the time his office requested my history, the time the concern was submitted. You do not have the source record. Not yet. Roman looked at Adrian. Get it. There are legal limits. Stay inside them. Adrian nodded. Roman turned back to Claire. If you remain in that room, I cannot control how Grant responds. I am not asking you to control the room for me. Roman accepted the words with a single nod. Then tomorrow you keep your seat. That evening, Claire spread printed emails across her dining table. At 11:48, Meridian sent the assignment confirmation scheduling log and internal notice showing when the neutrality concern had been entered. At 12:23, Adrian sent records documenting Grant's request for Claire's employment history. The request had been made 22 minutes after she identified the contract discrepancy. The timeline formed itself. Grant had shown no concern when Claire arrived. He had raised no objection when she began interpreting. He questioned her neutrality only after she exposed language that benefited his client. At 12:51, a final attachment appeared. Someone from Grant Mercer's office had contacted Elena Ruiz, the interpreter, originally assigned to the negotiation 1 day before the meeting. The call lasted 9 minutes. Elena withdrew 40 minutes later. Claire stared at the record. Grant had not chosen her. He had created an empty seat and assumed whoever filled it would be easier to control. Claire placed her hand over the first line of the timeline. The chair beside Roman's table had never been empty by accident. Claire slept for less than 3 hours. At dawn, the storm had moved east, leaving New Orleans beneath a hard blue sky. Claire stood at her dining table with the printed records arranged before her. The assignment confirmation, the internal compliance notice, Grant's request for her employment history, the timestamps, the record of the call to Elena Ruiz. She read each page again. She knew what happened when facts entered a room controlled by powerful men. They were softened, renamed, and buried beneath more confident voices. Claire placed the documents inside her portfolio in the order she intended to use them. At 8:21, she left her apartment. She wore the burgundy suit again. The color made her look composed even when she was not. Her hair was pinned neatly, her shoes were dry, her hands were steady. Fear had not disappeared. It had become organized. Crescent Crown Tower rose above Canal Street with the river bright behind it. Claire entered through the main doors at 8:34. When the elevator opened on the 42nd floor, Silas stood beside the doors holding a paper cup. He offered it to her. Claire looked at the cup. What is this coffee? I can see that. Mr. Vale said you probably did not eat breakfast. How would he know? Silas remained expressionless. You left the almond bar in your bag yesterday. Claire accepted the coffee. Does he notice everything? No. Only what matters to him. The answer followed Claire down the hallway. Roman was alone inside the room. He stood beside the windows reading a document. He wore a charcoal suit and a black tie. His sleeves were buttoned at the wrists, hiding the ink on his forearms. The formality did not make him less dangerous. He turned when Claire entered. His eyes moved to the coffee in her hand. Silas found you. Silas brought evidence that you discussed my breakfast habits with security. I asked whether you had eaten. That is not better. A faint movement touched his mouth. Claire placed her portfolio at the interpreter's station. "Did Adrian show you the records?" "Yes." "Are they enough?" Roman folded the document in his hand. "They are enough to force Grant to explain the timing. Explaining is not the same as losing." "No." He crossed the room. "That is why the liability memorandum matters. And if he refuses to retreat, we remain with the strategy we agreed on. You promised to ask before acting. I remember. I do not make promises casually." Claire opened her portfolio and removed her copies. "I brought everything. I assumed you would. Does it bother you that I do not intend to rely on your team alone?" Roman was silent for a moment. "No. Why?" "It is one of the reasons I trust you." Trust felt more intimate than attraction. "You have known me for 2 days. I have known men for 20 years who have shown me less." "That sounds like a problem with your social circle." "It is." The doors opened. Adrian entered with 2 attorneys behind him. The private moment disappeared. Within minutes, the room filled. Grant arrived at exactly 9. No apology today. He crossed to his seat with a leather folder beneath one arm and greeted Roman as though the previous afternoon had ended without conflict. "Good morning." Roman looked at the clock. "It is." Grant's gaze moved to Claire. She was already seated with her headset in place and her papers arranged in precise stacks. Something in his expression tightened. He had expected an empty chair. Claire met his eyes. Then she looked down at the contract. Adrian began with the revised liability section. For the first hour, no one mentioned the neutrality concern. The negotiation moved through customs procedures, emergency routing, and storage priorities. Claire translated with exact control. She refused to let Grant's presence alter the sound of her voice. At 10:17, one of the Colombian representatives requested a brief consultation with his legal team. Roman granted 10 minutes. The opposing attorneys moved into the adjoining room. Grant remained at the table. He opened his folder and reviewed a page without looking at Claire. Roman spoke quietly with Adrian near the windows. Silas stood outside the conference room doors. The silence felt arranged. Grant closed his folder. "You seem composed today, Ms. Bennett." Claire removed one side of the headset. "I am working. Some people find professional scrutiny distracting. Some people mistake scrutiny for evidence." Grant looked at her. "You believe the distinction matters. I believe distinctions are the reason contracts exist." His expression remained pleasant. "You may discover that reputations operate differently. Reputations are built from patterns. Perception often becomes the pattern. Only when no one examines who created it." The pleasantness left his eyes. "You received documents. That was not a question. Then it does not require an answer." Roman had stopped speaking to Adrian. He was watching them. Grant noticed. "You continue to prove my concern." "No, you continue to reveal its purpose." Before he could answer, the Colombian delegation returned. Everyone resumed their seats. The next section concerned suspension rights during material breaches. Adrian read from the English draft. Vale Atlantic may suspend access following a documented material breach that remains uncured after written notice. Claire listened. Then she looked down at the Spanish version. Her eyes stopped on the line. The word documented was missing. The Spanish language allowed suspension after a material breach. No requirement for proof, no record, no evidence. Claire did not translate. Adrian looked toward her. Grant did too. Roman remained still. Claire placed one finger beneath the sentence. The 2 versions are not equivalent. Grant's attorney exhaled. In what respect? The English version requires a documented material breach. The Spanish version requires only a material breach. That is a stylistic difference. No. Claire looked at him. One version requires evidence. The other permits action based on an allegation. Silence moved through the room. The parallel was impossible to miss. Grant's eyes became colder. One of the Colombian executives asked for the exact wording. Claire read both versions aloud. Adrian compared the pages. She is correct. Grant turned toward his attorney. Was this language reviewed? The attorney's face tightened. It came from the consortium draft. The Colombian legal counsel objected immediately. Their version, he insisted, had contained the evidentiary standard. Claire translated every word. Adrian opened a version history on his laptop. The room waited. He found the relevant entry. The word was removed during a revision submitted through Mercer Advisory. Every face turned toward Grant. Grant did not move. It appears to have been an editing error. Claire watched him. A missing word, a professional concern, a reputation placed under review without evidence. Grant had used the same structure twice, once in the contract, once against her. Roman spoke. Restore the language. Grant's attorney began to respond. Roman looked at him. Now. The attorney marked the correction. The meeting continued, but the room had changed. Grant's clients consulted their own counsel while Adrian requested additional version records. At 11:06, Grant closed his folder. Before we proceed further, there is another matter that should be addressed. Adrian looked toward Roman. Roman gave no response. Grant continued. This negotiation depends upon confidence in the accuracy and independence of all parties involved. Claire knew before he said her name. A concern has been raised regarding Ms. Bennett's neutrality. The Colombian executives looked toward Claire. Grant folded his hands. Her conduct suggests a personal alignment with Mr. Vale that may compromise the appearance of independence. The room became still. Claire heard the low hum of the ventilation system and her own breathing. Grant looked toward Roman. This is not an accusation. It is a question of process. Roman's face revealed nothing. He turned his attention to Claire. He did not speak for her. He did not clear the room. He waited. Claire removed her headset. She placed it carefully on the table. Then she stood. Since my professional conduct has been raised before the room, I will respond before the room. Grant's attorney objected that she was not a party. My name has been made part of the negotiation. I have the right to correct the record. Grant smiled faintly. This defensiveness is precisely why the concern exists. No. Claire opened her portfolio. The concern exists because I found language your team hoped no one would question. Grant's smile disappeared. Claire removed the first documents. I was assigned by Meridian at 4:18 on Monday afternoon. I had never met Roman Vale before Tuesday morning. No one from your office objected when I arrived or during the first hour of interpretation. At 9:58, I identified a discrepancy in the exclusivity clause. She placed the version record on the table. At 10:20, 22 minutes later, someone from your office requested my employment history, professional references, and client record. The Colombian representatives exchanged looks. Grant's face remained composed. Claire continued. At 5:14 that afternoon, less than 1 hour after the session ended, a concern regarding my neutrality was submitted to Meridian. She set down the internal notice. The concern did not identify evidence of bias. It did not describe a relationship. It did not cite an inaccurate translation. Grant's attorney said the documents did not prove Grant submitted anything. They prove motive. Motive for what Grant asked, to remove the person who found the difference. The room held its breath. Grant's voice stayed calm. You are making a serious accusation. I am presenting a timeline. A timeline assembled with Mr. Vale's resources. Claire reached for the final document. This record did not come from Mr. Vale. She placed it on the table. On Monday morning, someone from Mercer Advisory contacted Elena Ruiz, the interpreter originally assigned to this negotiation. For the first time, Grant lost control of his expression. Only for a fraction of a second. It was enough. Claire continued. The call lasted 9 minutes. Elena withdrew from the assignment 40 minutes later. One of the Colombian executives turned toward Grant. "You contacted the interpreter." Grant looked at Claire. "You do not know what was discussed. I know what happened afterward." Adrian opened another folder. "We do know what was discussed." Grant turned toward him. Adrian removed a signed statement. Elena Ruiz provided counsel with an account of the call. She states that a representative from Mercer Advisory warned her that participation in this negotiation could affect future work with the consortium. Grant's attorney stood. "This is improper." Roman spoke without raising his voice. "Sit down." The attorney froze. Roman looked at him. "Or leave." The man sat. Adrian continued. Elena understood the call as professional pressure. She withdrew because she believed remaining on the assignment could damage her career. The Colombian executives demanded to know whether Grant had authorized the contact and whether their company had approved it. Grant attempted to regain control. "I was protecting the integrity of a sensitive negotiation." Claire looked at him. "You created an empty seat." His gaze moved back to her. "You expected Meridian to send someone less experienced, someone who would enter late, see the room, and become too frightened to question your language. That is speculation. You were correct about one thing." Grant's eyes narrowed. "I was frightened." Claire's voice remained steady. "I simply did the work anyway." The words landed with more force than anger would have. Roman did not move. Grant turned toward him. "This entire display proves the concern. Your interpreter has access to your legal team, your security, and private records." Roman's response was quiet. Ms. Bennett defended herself. "With documents your people obtained. With facts your people created." Grant looked toward the consortium. "Mr. Vale is using a contractor to manipulate the room." Roman leaned back in his chair. "My attention did not alter your contract." His gaze moved to the missing word in the Spanish draft. "Your language did." Grant's clients no longer looked at Claire. They looked at him. Adrian placed the version history on the table and confirmed that Mercer Advisory had submitted the disputed revisions. Grant had never disclosed the contact with Elena. "This is not relevant to the commercial terms," Grant said. "It became relevant when you used my neutrality as leverage," Claire answered. Grant looked at her. "You are enjoying this?" "No." Claire felt the weight of every eye in the room. "I am correcting the record." Roman placed one hand beside the legal memorandum. "Now we address the commercial terms." Adrian distributed copies. Grant recognized the document before opening it. The color left his face by a degree. Adrian summarized the findings. The consortium had failed to disclose substantial liability connected to 2 storage facilities under federal review. Several representations in the contract conflicted with existing inspection records. The exposure could trigger a formal examination of the entire agreement. One of the Colombian executives demanded an explanation from Grant. Grant attempted to distinguish between known exposure and potential exposure. Adrian turned to the attached records. "The distinction is documented." Claire translated the word. "Documented." It passed across the table with the weight of everything Grant had tried to avoid. Roman watched him. "We can suspend this negotiation and refer the contract for external review." Grant's client immediately objected. Roman continued. "Or we can correct the drafts, disclose the exposure, and close the agreement without further delay." Grant looked at the memorandum. "What do you want?" Roman's eyes moved to Claire, then back to Grant. "The concern against Ms. Bennett is withdrawn." Grant said nothing. "You provide written confirmation that her work has been accurate, professional, and independent. That is unnecessary." Roman's expression did not change. "It is necessary to her." Grant looked toward Claire. "This is personal." Claire answered before Roman could. "You made it professional." The senior Colombian representative ordered Grant to do it. Grant opened a blank page on his laptop and turned the screen toward Claire. The statement read, "Claire Bennett performed her duties professionally and accurately to the best of our knowledge. No formal evidence of misconduct has been established." Claire read it once. "No." Grant stared at her. "What is wrong with it?" "To the best of our knowledge" suggests doubt. "No formal evidence has been established" suggests the possibility of informal evidence. That is standard language. It is evasive language. You are not drafting the settlement. I am drafting the correction to my professional record. Grant leaned back. "What wording do you require?" Claire spoke slowly. Claire Bennett performed her duties accurately, professionally, independently, and without evidence of bias. Any prior concern regarding her neutrality is withdrawn in full. Grant typed the sentence. He stopped before the final phrase. Claire waited. Roman said nothing. The silence belonged to her now. Grant finished the statement. He printed 2 copies. Claire read both. "Add that the concern was raised after I identified a material discrepancy in the contract." Grant looked up. "That implies retaliation. The timing implies retaliation. You are asking me to admit motive. I am asking you to preserve the sequence of events." The senior representative from the consortium looked at Grant. "Add it." Grant's fingers tightened against the paper. Then he added the sentence. The revised statement confirmed that the concern had arisen after Claire identified a material difference between the English and Spanish versions. He signed it. Claire did not reach for the page immediately. Send the same statement directly to Meridian's compliance office. Grant's attorney said, "That can be handled later." Claire looked at him. "No." Roman spoke. "Now." An assistant sent the document by email. Claire's phone vibrated. She checked the screen. Hannah had forwarded confirmation that Meridian received the statement and suspended the review pending immediate closure. Claire looked at Grant. "The record is corrected." His voice was low. "Is that enough?" "It is accurate." Grant gathered his documents, but the consortium's senior representative stopped him. "You will remain until our counsel determines whether you still represent us." Grant sat. The final hours moved differently. The consortium reviewed every revision with its own counsel. Adrian requested complete version histories. Claire translated line by line. No one interrupted her or questioned her pauses. By late afternoon, the parties had corrected the liability evidentiary and exclusivity provisions. Roman closed the contract. "We resume tomorrow for final review and signature." The senior Colombian representative stopped beside Claire's station. "You protected both sides today?" he said in Spanish. "I protected the meaning." He nodded and left. Grant remained seated while his client's counsel spoke quietly to him. When he finally stood, he looked older than he had that morning. He paused beside Claire. "You have made an enemy." Claire capped her pen. "No. You made a consequence." Grant's eyes shifted toward Roman. Roman had heard. He remained beside the windows perfectly still. Grant left without another word. The doors closed. Adrian and Silas stayed near the entrance. Claire remained at the interpreter's station with one hand on the signed statement. Roman approached. "You kept your seat. I told you I would. You should send the statement to every person at Meridian who received the concern." "I already have." A faint trace of approval entered his expression. "Of course you have." Claire looked down at the pages. "I thought this would feel different." "How louder?" "Victory is usually quiet after everyone else leaves." She looked at him. "You could have ended it faster." "Yes. You still believe your way would have worked?" "Yes." Claire appreciated that he did not lie. And this way, Roman looked toward the chair where Grant had been sitting. This way left no one wondering why he withdrew. It left me with my name. His gaze returned to her. I understand. Claire believed him. That was the dangerous part. Her phone vibrated again. A final message from Hannah appeared. The neutrality review had been closed. No restriction would be placed on Claire's future assignments. Grant's signed statement would remain in her professional file. 7 years of work remained hers because she had forced the facts to remain visible. Adrian approached with the liability memorandum. The consortium has agreed to disclose the exposure and revise the warranties. Claire nodded. And Grant. His client is considering whether he remains on the account. Silas opened the conference room doors. The late afternoon sun spread across the floor. Claire gathered her papers and placed them inside her portfolio. Roman stood close enough for her to feel his presence, but not close enough to touch her. You are still afraid, he said. Claire looked at him. Yes. Of Grant. Not only Grant. Roman understood the answer. He did not ask her to explain. Claire lifted the portfolio. Tomorrow at 9. Tomorrow at 9. She turned toward the open doors. Before she reached them, Roman spoke. Claire. She looked back. His voice was quieter than it had been all day. Thank you for making me wait. For what? To see whether your way would work. Claire studied him. And did it? Roman looked at the signed statement in her hand. Yes. Claire left the room. Behind her, Roman Vale remained beside a table he controlled in a building filled with people who feared him. For the first time since she had met him, his restraint did not feel like hidden violence. It felt like trust. Claire carried that thought into the elevator, through the marble lobby, and out into the evening light. The rain had finally left New Orleans. Water still gathered along the curbs, but the sky above the river had opened into pale gold. Streetcars moved again along Canal Street. People crossed intersections with their coats folded over their arms as though the storm had been nothing more than an inconvenience. Claire knew better. Some storms passed over a city. Others entered a life and changed the shape of every room afterward. She returned home without using Roman's car. No driver waited beneath the awning. No message appeared asking whether she had arrived safely. Roman had understood. He had offered help once. She had chosen for herself. He had not turned her refusal into another argument. Inside her apartment, Claire placed Grant's signed statement on the dining table. The page looked ordinary. Black letters, white paper, one signature. There was nothing dramatic about it. Yet the document carried 7 years of early mornings, late flights, private negotiations, and carefully protected confidences. It carried every moment in which someone had trusted her to repeat exactly what was said without adding fear, pride, anger, or judgment. Grant had tried to reduce all of that to a suspicion. Now the record showed what had actually happened. Claire had been accurate. The concern had appeared only after her accuracy became inconvenient. Her phone rang at 7:18. Hannah Pike's name appeared on the screen. Claire let it ring twice before answering. Claire, Hannah. I received the statement from Mercer Advisory. So did I. Compliance has closed the review. I read the email. There was a pause. I'm sorry this happened. Claire looked at the signed page. Which part? What do you mean? Are you sorry someone tried to damage my career? Or are you sorry? The agency accepted the concern without requiring evidence. Hannah exhaled slowly. We had to protect the company by placing all the risk on the contractor with the least institutional power. That is not how I would describe it. That is what happened. Hannah was quiet. Claire continued. I want written confirmation that the concern was unsupported. I want every internal restriction removed. I want the file to include Grant's full statement and the timeline showing when his office requested my history. I can ask compliance. No. You can tell compliance that I require it. Claire, there are procedures. There were procedures yesterday when you decided my executive work might be suspended without evidence. Hannah's voice softened. I believed you. Belief did not protect my assignments. No. The admission was small, but Claire heard the weight inside it. She looked toward the window. A train moved beyond the warehouse buildings, its windows bright against the fading sky. I also want to know what changes Meridian intends to make. Changes. A concern without supporting facts should not be enough to place a contractor under review. The contractor should be told what conduct is being questioned. The source should be disclosed whenever the law permits it. The person affected should have the opportunity to respond before future work is restricted. That is larger than your case. Yes, compliance may not agree, then they can explain their position in writing. Hannah remained silent long enough for Claire to hear voices in the agency office behind her. Finally, she said, I will schedule a meeting. Good. Are you still available for tomorrow's final session? Claire looked at the contract notes spread across her table. Yes, after everything that happened. The agreement is not finished. Hannah released a breath that might have been relief. Then I will confirm you for 9. No emergency rate this time. What? The assignment has changed in scope. There has been a professional dispute document review and additional preparation. Send a revised contract. Hannah almost laughed, then realized Claire was serious. I will speak to billing. Do that. Claire ended the call. For the first time since the message at 2 a.m, the silence in her apartment felt like her own. The next day, she entered Crescent Crown Tower at 8:46. The security officer behind the lobby desk checked her name and glanced at the time. Still early. Claire returned her license to her wallet. I am developing a reputation. The man smiled this time. The elevator carried her upward. When the doors opened, no guards waited to question her. Silas stood near the conference room reading a message on his phone. He looked up. Mr. Vale is inside. Is everyone else here? Not yet. Claire walked toward the doors. Silas spoke before she entered. Ms. Bennett. She turned. He appeared to consider his words. You handled yesterday well. Thank you. Most people would have asked him to solve it. Most people do not know what his solutions cost. Silas's expression remained controlled, but his eyes changed. No, he said. They usually do not. Inside the conference room, Roman stood at the table with his jacket removed. His sleeves were rolled again. The dark ink along his forearms disappeared beneath his cuffs. He was reading the final draft. Claire placed her portfolio at the interpreter's station. Good morning. Roman looked at the clock. You are 14 minutes early. I wanted to avoid becoming predictable. You failed. She looked at him. Roman closed the contract. I expected you 17 minutes ago. Claire set down her pen. That sounds dangerously close to a joke. It was an observation. Of course. A quiet warmth entered his face. Then it was gone. How did the call with Meridian go? Claire paused. How do you know there was a call I assumed there would be? You are learning. Slowly. Claire removed the revised agency agreement from her portfolio. They closed the review. I asked them to correct the record, remove all restrictions, and revise their complaint process. Roman's gaze moved over the pages. And if they refuse, I will decide whether Meridian remains useful to me. He looked at her. You would leave. If the company cannot protect professional standards, it should not control my access to clients. Roman nodded once. No argument. No offer to purchase the agency. Claire noticed the absence. Thank you. For what? For not saying you could make the problem disappear. I considered it. I know. I also considered buying Meridian. Claire stared at him. Roman's expression did not change. That is not funny. I did not say it was. Did you reject the idea? Yes. Why? Because you would hate it. I would. And because you would leave the company immediately. I would. Roman leaned one hand against the table. I am learning to calculate outcomes that include your choices. The sentence settled somewhere beneath Claire's ribs. Before she could answer, Adrian entered carrying 2 binders. He looked from Claire to Roman, then placed the documents on the table. The consortium has accepted the revised disclosures. Their new counsel will attend by video. And Grant Claire asked. Removed from the account. By his client. Yes. Not by Roman. Adrian's eyes moved toward Roman. Not by Roman. Claire believed him. The final session began at 9. The room felt different without Grant. The Colombian representatives spoke more directly. Their new attorney asked precise questions without disguising them as compliments. Adrian answered without performance. Claire translated. At 9:47, she found another discrepancy. The English version allowed 5 business days for written notice. The Spanish version allowed 5 calendar days. Claire placed one finger beneath the sentence. The notice periods are not equivalent. No one sighed. No one accused her of overstepping. The new attorney checked both pages. You are correct. The language was revised. At 10:18, Claire identified a difference between reasonable access and continuous access. At 11:06, she corrected a reference to the wrong terminal number. Each correction made the final agreement narrower, clearer, and harder to manipulate. Roman watched the process with the same attention he had given her on the first morning. But the room no longer mistook his attention for her authority. Claire had established her own. At 12:23, the final pages were placed before both parties. The senior Colombian representative signed first. Roman signed last. His pen moved once across the page. Vale Atlantic secured access to the ports. The consortium secured the inland routes. Both language versions carried equal legal weight. The contract was complete. Adrian gathered the signature pages. The representatives shook hands. No one celebrated loudly. Agreements of that size did not end with applause. They ended with closed folders, careful expressions, and people already calculating the next consequence. The senior representative approached Claire. You saved us from signing 2 different agreements. Claire removed her headset. I helped make sure both sides signed the same one. He smiled. I hope we work together again. So do I. When the last visitor left, the conference room became quiet. Adrian remained at the table organizing the final documents. Roman stood near the windows. Silas waited outside. Claire closed her notebook. Adrian handed her a slim folder. This is for you. Inside was a formal offer from Vale Atlantic. The salary was almost twice her previous annual income. The position included private transportation, health coverage, travel accommodations, and exclusive responsibility for the company's Spanish language negotiations. Claire read the first page, then looked at Roman. You prepared this before the agreement was signed. Yes. How long before yesterday? Adrian closed his briefcase. I will leave you to discuss it. The doors closed behind him. Claire returned her attention to the offer. This is generous. It is appropriate. It is exclusive. Yes. I would work only for Vale Atlantic. Yes. And every client I have built would become a former client. Roman's expression remained still. You would have more security. There is that word again. I meant professional security. I know what you meant. Claire closed the folder. I cannot accept. Roman did not move. Because of Grant partly. He is gone. His argument is not. She placed the offer on the table. If I become your exclusive interpreter immediately after he accused me of being aligned with you, the lie becomes easier to believe. You know it is not true. I know. My clients know only what they can see. Roman looked toward the folder. What do you want? Instead, Claire had expected resistance. The question changed the shape of the conversation. A limited independent contract. You call when Vale Atlantic requires my expertise. I accept or decline depending on availability. I keep my other clients. I set my professional rates. No exclusivity. Roman considered the terms. How many days of priority access? None. His eyes lifted. I will not promise availability I may not have. What about confidential matters requiring immediate response? You pay an emergency rate, higher than Meridian's. Much higher. A faint movement touched his mouth. You prepared this. I do not enjoy professional surprises. Roman walked to the table. He turned the offer over and wrote several notes on the blank back page. Then he signed beneath them. Claire read what he had written. Independent consultant. No exclusivity. Assignments accepted at her discretion. Emergency rate subject to separate agreement. Roman offered her the pen. That was easy, she said. No. What was it, Claire? Claire signed. Roman watched her place the page inside her portfolio. You expected me to argue. Yes. Are you disappointed? Suspicious. That sounds healthier. The late afternoon sun reached across the table. Claire looked around the room. The first time she entered, rain had been running from her coat. 18 men had watched her cross the floor. She had believed one damaged entrance might erase 7 years of work. Now the contracts were signed. Grant was gone. Her name remained intact. One question still waited. Claire turned toward Roman. Why did you stop the meeting? His face became unreadable. You know why. I know the official reason. The original assignment had changed. You suspected someone wanted an unknown interpreter at your table. That was enough. It was not everything. Roman looked toward the river. For several seconds he said nothing. Claire waited. When he spoke, his voice was lower. You entered shaking. You mentioned that. Most frightened people try to hide it. I tried. No. You tried to control it. That is different. Claire remained still. Roman continued. Your dress was soaked. Your hair had come loose. Every man in that room had already decided what you were before you reached the station. I knew. I could see that you knew. He turned toward her. You did not pretend confidence. You did not apologize to make them comfortable. You did not ask anyone to excuse you. I was too busy trying not to fall apart. You walked to the station. That was my job. I have watched armed men enter rooms with less courage. Claire looked away. I was terrified. I know. That does not sound courageous. It is the only kind that matters. The words entered the quiet between them. Claire looked back at him. So you cleared the room because you felt sorry for me. Roman's expression hardened. No. Good. I cleared it because the assignment change made you a possible threat. That is the answer I already have, and because I did not want the room to destroy you before I understood who you were. Claire's pulse shifted. You did not know me. No. You thought I might be working against you. Yes. And you still cared what the room did to me. Roman did not answer immediately. When he did, the honesty was almost brutal. I looked at you and realized the greater danger was that I wanted you to stay. The city beyond the windows seemed to recede. Claire felt the same tension she had felt over lunch when Roman said he wanted something from her, but had not yet decided what. Now he had decided. She held his gaze. "What do you want?" "Dinner." The simplicity of the answer surprised her. "No private club?" "No." "No restaurant you own?" "No." "No room that clears when you arrive?" Roman's mouth moved slightly. "You may choose the room." Claire considered him. "Tomorrow night?" "Yes. I choose the restaurant." "Agreed." No security at the table. They remain outside. Across the street. Roman paused. Claire raised one eyebrow. "You promised to ask before acting. Across the street. No business unless I bring it up." "Agreed. If I leave you, do not follow me." Roman's expression became serious. "I would never force you to stay. Not forcing someone is not the same as making it easy for them to leave." He absorbed the distinction. Then he nodded. "I will make it easy." Claire lifted her portfolio. "This is dinner, not a promise. Dinner is enough." The next evening, Claire chose a small restaurant on Chartres Street. The place belonged to a family she had known since college. The tables were close together. Old photographs covered the walls. A trumpet player performed near the back beneath low amber lights. Claire arrived first. She chose a table beside the window. At 7:03, Roman entered. No one became silent. No one stood. No one checked his expression before continuing a conversation. A waiter carrying a tray asked him to move out of the aisle. Roman moved. Claire watched him cross the room. For the first time since she had met him, he entered a place that did not reshape itself around his power. Silas stood across the street beneath a balcony exactly where Claire had allowed him to remain. Roman reached the table. "You are late," Claire said. He looked at the clock above the bar. 3 minutes. "I can count." In both languages, Claire smiled before she could stop herself. Roman sat across from her. The owner brought menus and greeted Claire by name. He gave Roman no special attention. Roman looked around the room. "You come here often, sometimes. They know you." "Yes." "No one appears frightened of you. I work hard to maintain that." The corner of his mouth lifted. Dinner arrived. For several minutes they spoke about ordinary things. Claire told him why she became an interpreter. Her mother had grown up speaking Spanish at home but stopped using it in public after classmates mocked her accent. Claire had studied the language first to recover something her family had been taught to hide. Roman listened. He told her he had grown up near the river. His father had driven trucks for a company that stole wages from its drivers and threatened anyone who complained. Roman learned early that contracts mattered only when someone had enough power to enforce them. Claire watched him. "That explains the logistics company. It explains part of it. And the rest," Roman looked toward the trumpet player. "The rest is not a dinner conversation, because I would leave, because you should decide how much truth you want before I place it in front of you." Claire appreciated the answer. She did not mistake it for innocence. Near the end of the meal, Roman asked why she had agreed to come. Claire folded her napkin. "You listened when listening cost you something. You stood in front of Grant when leaving would have been safer. I was protecting my career. You were protecting your right to define yourself." Claire looked at him. "What are you protecting now?" Roman glanced around the crowded restaurant, then back at her. "The possibility that you might choose to return." The answer did not ask for surrender. It asked for another choice. Claire leaned back. "Choosing you once does not mean belonging to you." "I know. I will disagree with you. I am beginning to expect it. There may be parts of your life I cannot accept." Roman did not look away. "I know. This is still only dinner. Yes. No promises. Not tonight." The trumpet player began a slower song. Outside, the streets remained damp beneath the lights of the French Quarter. Claire lifted her glass. Roman waited. Not because he lacked the power to move first, because he had learned that her choice mattered more when he gave it room to exist. Claire touched her glass to his. For the first time since she walked into Crescent Crown Tower, no one was deciding what she was worth. Not Grant, not Meridian, not Roman. She had chosen the room. She had chosen the table. And for that night, she had chosen the man sitting across from her.